Imagine this, a world gripped by fear, paranoia, and the looming threat of nuclear war. The year is 1962, and the Cold War is at its peak. Across the globe, the United States and the Soviet Union are engaged in a tense standoff, each side wary of the other's next move. In this climate of suspicion, the American government began to see threats not only from abroad, but astonishingly from within. In the midst of this tense environment, a secret plan was drafted, one that would forever remain one of the most shocking what-ifs in U.S. history. The plan proposed that the United States government itself would stage attacks on its own people. These were not mere drills or training exercises. The proposals included exploding planes, fabricated funerals, and even staged civilian deaths, all carefully designed to appear as acts of aggression by Cuba. The intent? To manipulate the American public and Congress into supporting a full-scale military invasion of Cuba, a nation just 90 miles from Florida. It sounds like a story ripped from a Cold War spy thriller, but this was real. Declassified documents would later reveal that these plans were drafted under the title Operation Northwoods. Top military officials had signed and stamped the proposal, ready to execute operations that could have resulted in massive civilian casualties. Only one man, President John F. Kennedy, stood between this plan and execution. He read the documents, absorbed the implications, and decisively refused to authorize any attacks on U.S. soil. This hook sets the stage for a story of fear, power, and the tension between military ambition and moral responsibility. It's a story that reminds us that sometimes the biggest threats are not foreign adversaries, but ideas conceived within the corridors of power, where secrecy and paranoia can drive even the most respected institutions to contemplate the unthinkable. The tension, the risk, and the moral stakes are immense, a perfect narrative to draw viewers into the story of Operation Northwoods. The fear behind the plan. The roots of Operation Northwoods lie in the profound fear and uncertainty that gripped the United States during the early 1960s. Fidel Castro's rise to power in 1959 transformed Cuba from a close U.S. ally into a communist state aligned with the Soviet Union. For American policymakers, Cuba's proximity, just 90 miles from the Florida coast, made the situation urgent. The U.S. feared that Cuba could become a staging ground for Soviet influence, espionage, and even missile deployment, threatening national security in a direct and immediate way. In 1961, the Bay of Pigs invasion, a U.S.-backed attempt to overthrow Castro, ended in humiliating failure. Approximately 1,400 Cuban exiles, trained and equipped by the CIA, attempted to invade southern Cuba. The invasion collapsed within days. The failure was a severe blow to American prestige, the Kennedy administration's credibility, and the confidence of military planners who had expected a swift success. The humiliation left a lingering sense of urgency. Something had to be done to fix the Cuba problem, and military leaders were determined to prevent another failure. The combination of the failed Bay of Pigs invasion and Cuba's alignment with the Soviet Union heightened fears of communist expansion in the Western Hemisphere. U.S. officials believed that Cuba could become a hub for global communist activity, exporting ideology and potentially launching attacks on U.S. interests. In this climate of fear, some military leaders began considering extreme measures. The idea was not just to prepare for war, but to manufacture a reason for it. The anxiety, paranoia, and desire for swift action created fertile ground for radical proposals. Proposals that would eventually manifest as Operation Northwoods. This part of the story establishes the psychological and strategic backdrop of Operation Northwoods. It's a tale of failure, fear, and desperation that drove U.S. military leadership to consider extraordinary measures to control events in Cuba. The story highlights how national fear and a sense of humiliation can push even respected institutions toward morally questionable strategies, setting the stage for the shocking plans to follow. By early 1962, the Pentagon's Joint Chiefs of Staff formalized their plans for a top-secret proposal titled Justification for U.S. Military Intervention in Cuba. This document, which would later be declassified, outlined a shocking array of actions that were designed to create the appearance of Cuban aggression. The proposal demonstrated a willingness to consider extreme measures, including acts that would have directly endangered American civilians. The plan included staged hijackings of civilian planes, simulated attacks on U.S. ships, and even explosions that could be blamed on Cuban forces. The objective was not to engage with Cuba directly, but to manipulate public perception. Military planners believed that if Americans were convinced that Cuba had attacked the United States, both Congress and the public would demand retaliatory action. To make these attacks appear authentic, the plan even proposed faking funerals, casualty lists, and news reports, ensuring that the deception would be persuasive and widely accepted. Behind this shocking proposal were some of the highest-ranking military officials in the country, including General Lyman Lemnitzer, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The planning process involved meticulous preparation, from drafting maps highlighting Cuban military positions to preparing detailed memos outlining potential attack scenarios. The plan demonstrated a disturbing level of willingness to use fear and deception as tools to achieve political objectives. Operation Northwoods, while never executed, exemplifies the extreme lengths military planners were willing to consider during the Cold War. It reveals a disturbing aspect of strategy in which domestic citizens were treated as instruments to justify foreign policy goals. The plan's existence also underscores the tension between military ambition and presidential authority, a tension that would become the defining factor in whether these ideas ever saw the light of day. Visually, this part of the story could be represented with dimly lit Pentagon offices, maps with Cuba highlighted in red, folders stamped top secret, and officers studying strategic plans. It's a moment of high tension, moral conflict, and stark demonstration of Cold War-era paranoia and desperation. When Operation Northwoods reached President John F. Kennedy, he was faced with one of the most morally and politically challenging decisions of his presidency. Reading the top-secret memos and reviewing the proposed actions, Kennedy recognized the profound ethical implications. His own citizens could be placed in direct danger in order to manufacture public consent for war. The audacity and extremity of the plan were staggering. Kennedy's response was decisive. He refused to authorize any attacks on U.S. soil, demonstrating both moral clarity and leadership under pressure. The president understood that the military, while expert in strategy and defense, did not have the authority to compromise American citizens' lives for political objectives. Soon after rejecting the plan, Kennedy replaced General Lyman Lemnitzer, the official who had authored and championed the proposal, further signaling the administration's unwillingness to tolerate such extreme measures. The rejection of Operation Northwoods had lasting effects on both the Pentagon and Kennedy's administration. Military leaders were forced to recalibrate their strategies, and the president's authority was reaffirmed. The episode highlighted the importance of civilian control over the military and the essential role of ethical considerations in national security decisions. Although the plan was never executed, its existence remained classified for decades, a hidden chapter of Cold War history that illustrates the tension between fear-driven military strategies and presidential oversight. The episode also provides a cautionary tale about the potential for secrecy and paranoia within government institutions, reminding historians and citizens alike that even democratic governments are capable of contemplating morally questionable actions under the pressure of global conflict. It was not until 1997 that the public learned of Operation Northwoods. Declassified documents revealed the full extent of the proposals, shocking historians, scholars, and ordinary citizens alike. The memos showed that the U.S. military had, in fact, considered extreme measures against its own population to justify a war. The revelation prompted intense debate about ethics, national security, and the balance of power between military and civilian leadership. Historians pointed out that the plan's sophistication and detail reflected not only strategic thinking, but also a troubling willingness to exploit fear and manipulate perception. Journalists and academics analyzed the documents, revealing how close the nation had come to an unthinkable domestic attack under the guise of foreign policy. Operation Northwoods' exposure also underscored the importance of transparency and oversight in government operations. While the plan was never enacted, its existence raised fundamental questions. How can citizens ensure that those entrusted with national security do not abuse that power? What mechanisms prevent military and intelligence agencies from prioritizing strategic objectives over the safety of civilians? This revelation became a critical case study in ethics, governance, and Cold War history. It illustrates the risks inherent in unchecked military planning and the importance of leaders like Kennedy who exercise moral courage. The disclosure also reminds the public of the fragility of democratic oversight in times of crisis and fear, emphasizing the delicate balance between national security and civil liberties. Operation Northwoods never happened, but its legacy continues to provoke reflection and debate. The plan reminds us that even in a democratic society, fear and strategic ambition can lead to proposals that challenge ethical boundaries. It underscores the importance of vigilance, oversight, and moral judgment in the exercise of governmental power. The episode also highlights the critical role of leadership. Kennedy's decision to reject Operation Northwoods prevented potential domestic catastrophe and reinforced the principle that civilians' lives cannot be used as tools in political or military strategy. The plan's existence, revealed decades later, serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of secrecy, fear, and unchecked ambition. In reflecting on Operation Northwoods, we are forced to confront uncomfortable truths that threats to society do not always come from foreign enemies, and that the most dangerous plans can sometimes originate within one's own government. The story emphasizes the need for transparency, ethical decision-making, and public engagement in matters of national security. Ultimately, Operation Northwoods stands as a testament to the fragility of trust between government institutions and the people they serve. Its revelation reshapes our understanding of Cold War history, illustrating how fear, power, and human ambition can intersect in ways that challenge moral and ethical norms. It's a story that continues to resonate, reminding us that vigilance, courage, and ethical leadership are essential in safeguarding both freedom and democracy. If you found this story as shocking as we did, don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe to our channel to uncover even more hidden and untold secrets from history, and we'd love to hear from you. Drop your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Who knows what other truths are waiting to be discovered?